set about building bigger and better carriers, believing that air power was the key to future naval combat.
At Brooklyn Navy Yard, the new Queen of the Fleet is commissioned with top brass from the Secretary of the Navy on down present for the notable occasion. Captain Robert Stroh takes command of the 60,000-ton carrier USS Saratoga, the biggest and most powerful vessel afloat. Special attention was given crewmen's comfort in her design, which also provided unmatched plane handling facilities, key to her striking power. The new Saratoga, 6th Navy vessel to bear the name, would dwarf her World War II namesake with its giant flight deck, 5 city blocks long, 1 block wide, and its complement of 100 jets and crew of 3,500. The greatest one-ship concentration of naval power ever built. Truly the new Queen of the Seas.
There were also 2 new technologies developing that would dramatically influence ship design once again. They were nuclear reactors, small enough to fit on board a ship and provide an almost endless supply of energy for propulsion, and the guided missile that would be capable of replacing most naval armaments.
A glimpse of the Navy of tomorrow, the USS Boston, America's first guided missile cruiser in action off Cuba. From below deck magazines, its potent Terrier missiles are automatically positioned on launching racks. Ship and missile were designed for each other in what engineers call an integrated weapons system, lethally efficient. This cruiser mounts no big guns. One of its missiles can sink any enemy ship, or with an atom warhead, smash an enemy base.
Guided missiles were the answer to several problems for the modern fleet, but also a curse. One small, well-aimed missile could in theory hit and sink a giant aircraft carrier with 100 aircraft aboard.
The nuclear-powered carrier Enterprise has joined the 7th Fleet off the Vietnam coast to lend added punch to the coastal patrol. The Enterprise will be joined by the nuclear-powered guided missile frigate Bainbridge to become the first nuclear-powered ships in history to enter combat. The Enterprise will be stationed off Saigon to launch planes for airstrikes against the Viet Cong in South Vietnam.
The strategy of fleet structure was evolving to a defense in depth. At the center, the supercarrier and aircraft capable of striking enemy targets with aircraft launch weapons and also air-to-air defense against enemy aircraft. The missile cruiser would target distant threats as well as providing surface-to-air missile capability. Another layer of picket vessels or frigates were geared toward anti-submarine operations to protect the fleet. Hastened by the Cold War, anti-ship missile development was rapid. The first use of a modern anti-ship missile saw Egypt fire a Soviet Styx missile that sank an Israeli destroyer in 1967. In 1973, Israeli and Syrian forces, both armed with anti-ship missiles, were engaged. The Syrian forces were sunk as the Israelis utilized anti-missile countermeasures. 1982 saw the conflict between Britain and Argentina over possession of the Falkland Islands, once again proving the need for air defense, as 2 British vessels, the landing ships Sir Tristan and the Galahad, were each hit by bombs from Argentine fighters in Bluff Cove, causing severe casualties and the later scuttling of the Galahad. The Argentine Air Force was able to inflict severe damage on British naval vessels utilizing the French Exocet anti-ship missiles. The HMS Sheffield and container ship Atlantic Conveyor were both sunk, and the destroyer HMS Glamorgan seriously damaged. Each was hit by Exocet missiles. Another problem encountered was that the superstructures of these modern vessels were made of lightweight aluminium. It has a much lower burning temperature than traditional steel. Ship designers have gone back to the drawing board. New anti-missile defense systems were developed and installed on the modern ships. Standard missiles could shoot down an incoming missile, or the Phalanx close support machine gun could track and shoot down low-flying missiles. There were also electronic countermeasures, chaff and flare dispensers. However, none of these systems were either working or in operation aboard the USS Stark, a missile frigate. In 1987, whilst in the Persian Gulf, 2 Exocet missiles fired from an Iraqi jet fighter hit the ship, severely damaging her. October 2000, and the guided missile destroyer USS Cole was also hit and disabled, but this time by a small watercraft packed with explosives that rammed the side of the ship in a suicide attack. The Arleigh Burke-class Aegis-equipped vessel was at the time one of the most advanced destroyers afloat. Modern naval vessels are as diverse and sophisticated as ever, from aircraft carriers for fixed-wing aircraft to helicopter-only carriers. Smaller carriers, like the British design, utilize a ski jump at the end of the deck to aid in launching aircraft. A very dangerous place to live and work is the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. From the deafening roar of jet engines, the danger of turboprops spinning invisibly about, fully fueled and armed planes with high explosive missiles and armaments stacked along the edge of the narrow runway, plus a rolling deck to make it a hazardous environment. To help aid a safe working relationship on the flight deck of a US aircraft carrier, the sailors wear different colored shirts that designate their tasks. White shirts are responsible for general safety. Red shirts handle munitions and bombs. Purple shirts or grapes handle jet fuel. And green shirts handle the catapult and arresting gear that launch and retrieve the aircraft. Yellow shirts are responsible for directing aircraft on the deck. Even in peacetime, there are hazards in maintaining an aircraft carrier. There have at times in the past been very serious accidents on the flight deck. In one instance, in 1967, aboard the carrier Forrestal, a jet parked to the side of the runway accidentally fired an air-to-air missile that shot across the deck and hit several planes parked on the other side, instantly causing an explosion and fire. All the aircraft were fully fueled and laden with weapons.
There, on deck. Somehow a Zuni rocket has been triggered, roaring across the flight deck and hitting an A-4 Skyhawk. A sheet of flame from the A-4's ruptured fuel tank has enveloped the Skyhawk and her immediate neighbors. Behind that curtain of smoke, 2 1,000-pound bombs have already dropped from her wings onto the burning deck, while only one hose is actually operating. Carries a message. The Forrestal is in deep trouble.
A fire at sea is the ultimate nightmare for any sailor because there is nowhere to run, especially on a vessel packed with aviation fuel, high explosive munitions, bombs and missiles.
Your instincts have to be right. Your courage pinned on like a badge. Following the third explosion, the first 2 fire parties had been virtually wiped out. The fire was not completely out of control. A great ship was on the verge of dying. To save her, other men were going to have to go back on deck, most of them without sufficient training in firefighting techniques.
The Forrestal fire taught many lessons, the least of which even one small missile penetrating the defenses could knock out a supercarrier and her complement of aircraft. The Forrestal fire killed 134 and injured 161 sailors and aircrew, destroying 21 aircraft. The very same accident happened again in 1969 aboard the USS Enterprise. A Zuni rocket was triggered, causing a fire. 27 sailors were killed and 314 injured. 15 aircraft destroyed. Several countries continue to maintain an aircraft